Hi friends, this is Marilyn from tarotclarity.com, and today I'm showcasing a deck that presented itself to me rather than me seeking it out. And that deck is the Gareth Knight Tarot, created in 1984 as a collaborative effort between Sander Littel, an artist, and Gareth Knight, who is the individual who conceived of the deck. This past year, my husband and I were in Hawaii, and whenever I go anywhere, I always check out the metaphysical shops. And while I was on the various islands, I checked out all the shops. And when I was on Oahu, we went into Honolulu and other places, but this particular store, this metaphysical shop, was called Gaia, so I want to give them a shout out. And while I was there, I noticed that they had some old decks that were for sale among their other, newer decks. And I always check out tarot decks. Most of the time I have them, but every now and then I stumble across something I didn't have. And I found this deck in a pouch for a not too great price, $25 US. That was it. And then when I looked at it, I realized it was an out-of-print deck that I probably could not find anywhere for $25. So even though it is an occult deck, which I don't generally subscribe to, those of you who follow my feed know that I prefer the Italian or the pre-occult decks from France and Switzerland, Spain, Italy. But, I am also a collector, and I have a lot of decks that I don't necessarily adhere to their philosophies. And how could I resist it? It just presented itself to me. It's in excellent condition with the exception of a few things, which I'll point out, which are regrettable. There's damage to the cards, but and I didn't notice it when I bought the deck. I perused the deck to make sure I had 78 cards, but I didn't notice the damage because of the way I was holding the cards and looking through them. But I can live with it, especially for this price. And it wouldn't have been a deck that I would have sought out. So for it to present itself to me at this price, I was like, yeah, I'll buy it. As I mentioned, it came in a pouch. I didn't have the box, which would explain also, why I didn't pay a fortune for it, since it is without the box. But I did get both of the title cards and a card describing the collaboration between the two gentlemen. Gareth Knight, by the way, is still alive. And you'll see right away with the Fool card that it adheres to occultist tradition. We have the alligator in the Fool card, a cat. He's holding a flower, and he is in a harlequin outfit. The Magician. You'll notice the white flowers below, the red flowers above, the lemniscate above his head. And, as you'll see, beginning with the Magician forward, that the names are all occult names, So we have the Magician rather than La Bateleur, the High Priestess instead of the Papessa. The High Priestess is floating in water in what appears to be a moonboat. She's holding her book. She has the triple moon crown and the two columns, the two pillars. I forgot to mention, here is the back of this deck, published in 1984. Here we have the Empress. She has the sun, the moon, her orb, her crown of stars, the shield with the eagle, and wheat and grass. And there's something going on with her belly. Maybe she's pregnant. The Emperor. He's holding in his hand, I'm not sure if that's an orb. It looks like a Vesica Pisces, maybe, if that's what that's called, with a type of crucifix above, or a cross above it. He does not have the eagle on a shield, but he is on some type of carpet or runway with symbols that appear to resemble birds in flight. And he does appear to be on a magic carpet. He appears to be above the earth. The Hierophant, rather than the Pope, he's in front of a cloud of swirling little colors, which I'm sure has significance. But as I did not receive a little white book with this, I don't know what they are. He's holding his scepter. He's got, as the high priestess does, the two columns behind him, and his religious assistants, similar to the assistants of the devil, which we'll get to. In the Lover's card, we have what appears to be a female officiant marrying the couple. They're at a crossroads here with, I don't know, a burst of yellow, if it's sunshine or not, with wheat at her feet, I presume to show abundance, growth, birth, creation, which number 6. So that's interesting. Symbolism there. The Chariot, number 7, with the typical sphinxes, which we see in occult tarot decks. The T for the letter that it is. The word escapes me, but it is the 7th one. And very lovely, nice colors. We have Justice, which is 8 rather than 11, so I do appreciate that. And Justice is presented here without a blindfold, with her sword, and with a scale which is balanced. And she sits in front of calm waters. The Hermit. The Wheel of Fortune, which has the 4 figures we're accustomed to seeing in occult tarot. Overall, it's fairly typical of the Wheel of Fortune in the occult tarot. On the outer wheel, we have symbols from the zodiac. On the inner wheel, we have symbols of the planets, starting with the sun, the moon, and upside down Venus, which is repeated on the other side. I think this one is Mercury. I think that's Jupiter. And then Saturn. We have the Strength card. The female figure has the lemniscate above her. There appears to be fire behind her, but I don't know for sure what that is. It just could be color. And she is prying open the jaws of the lion, whose tail takes on a shape, right? That might be a letter. I don't know. I'm not familiar enough to know, but it kind of looks like it. The Hanged Man with his flexed foot, and beneath him, on the ground, far, far below, is a starburst pattern in white. And I don't know what it means in this deck. If anybody knows, let me know. I'd appreciate it. And his face looks like a sun. Wow, look at this death card, full of color. Very cool death card. A lot going on in Temperance also. We have the sun and the moon, night and day, the rainbow, the transference of liquid from one vessel to another, the Star of David. Lovely. And we have the devil and his minions. They are chained to whatever it is beneath his feet. My eyes are not so good. I can't make that out. Maybe you can. Oh, it's the bottom of the caduceus. That's what it is. And then what is typically known as the tower in this deck is referred to as lightning struck tower. And we have a zigzag burst of jolt of creation or energy coming from the divine and destroying, or I don't know if it's destroying, but it's disturbing the crown of the tower with people falling. And then those particular shapes. Here we have the star card, and here is where I begin to see damage to the cards. Now, it didn't happen on my watch. I don't know if it happened with the original owner who sold it to the shop, or if it happened in the shop. But the next sequence between the star and the universe card, it appears as though there was some type of unfortunate cutting of the cards. But I can live with it. Especially since the deck came to me and I would never have sought it out. And the cards otherwise are in pristine condition. So I think it, to me, looks as though it was an unfortunate cutting, maybe when it was, who knows how, but it just looks as though, like maybe with a box cutting knife or some kind of tool that inadvertently damaged a pristine deck. So I don't know. But at any rate, here we have the star card pouring 2 vessels into the river rather than one on land and one in water, with the familiar bird in the tree with 8 stars. And the moon in eclipse. And look at this sun. Oh, it's so magnificent, lovely. The purple and the yellow and orange sky with the sun and the sunflowers and the 2 children. Last Judgment. And here the world is called the universe, with the same figures in the 4 corners as we saw in the 10, the Wheel of Fortune. And now we're moving on to the pip cards. And for no particular reason, I'm beginning with the swords. So the Ace of Swords has a crown with several colored gems, and with a bunch of what appear to be nuts and fruits. And it emanates light. And with the 2, we see a heart in the center of the swords. We see a pierced heart that we're familiar with in other occult decks, and decks based on the Rider-Waite-Smith deck, which of course this came after, since it was published in '84. That's pretty interesting. And then with the 7, we see a serpentine sword with the colors of, I guess, the chakras. And then it falls apart with the 8, which reminds me of like a rib cage. The 9. And then the 10. But notice these 2 swords in the background, how they don't even curve like scimitars. They're different. No. And in place of the valet and the knight, we have princesses and princes. And so here we have the Princess of Swords. And the princes of all the suits are the ones who are the victors. Maybe they're the ones with the real power. They're all on vessels. Two of them have winged. Two of the vessels are headed by winged creatures, and the other two suits are not. They're earth creatures. But the Prince of Swords, his chariot is being pulled by a winged creature and surrounded by angels. Then the Queen, she's got somebody's head. And then the King, which resembles more the knight. So it seems in this deck that the prince is the one with the power, and the king is more of the knight. And moving on to the suit of cups, we have what readily appears as though, as a Eucharist, a reference to the Eucharist of Christ. It's very familiar in Christian, or particularly in Catholic, visuals, right? We have the chalice, we have the Eucharist, the disc of the Eucharist, we have the dove. We clearly have water, which, shows, an association with water. We have fish filling the cups with red liquid. Maybe it's life's blood. The blood of life, maybe. And okay, so the fish fills the cups, and then the cups spill onto one another and then onto the ground, from which a plant grows. And then the plant, in kind of like a DNA configuration, now fills the cups. And now we have cups growing on the plant. But the plant is not mature enough yet. So it's like a cycle, and now it is, and now it's filling the cups again. But the cups are not in turn filling the earth. They're not spilling onto the earth. Then we have 7, where now the plant is growing forth from the vessel. 8, they're independent. Wow, look at that. And 9, they're interdependent. And then with 10, we have the Tree of Life. That was a very interesting sequence of cards. Beautiful. The Princess of Cups in water, sharing the water with lily pads, a swan, and a fish, and behind her are mountains. She's holding a chalice or a cup. Again, a prince on a chariot being headed by a winged creature. In this case, it appears to be an eagle, and he is surrounded by what appear to be snakes. And I have not read about this deck, so I don't know all the symbolism, and I do apologize for that. But the best way to learn a deck is to use it, and then as you become interested, in what you see, you look things up. The Queen of Cups, I think, is my favorite card in this deck. It's beautiful. She's clearly underwater with her hair, flowing in the water. It's just so pretty. And then the King is again on a horse. Now we move on to the suit of Wands. And we have what looks like, a lightning bolt from the divine that charges energy, like energy striking, like and it is an ace, so it's like the energy, the potential, right? The potential for the beginning, for growth. I definitely picked that up in this card. So the patterns, the numbers play in this deck are pretty cool. Oh, you can get lost in this deck. The Eight of Wands kind of has like a wheelish look to it, right? The 9. And then when we get to the 10, we don't see readily see the tree of life as we did with the 10 of Cups. It has, that familiarity about it. We have like 3 columns, but it's not as clear. It's not as evident. The Princess, her animal skin. The Prince, again, on a chariot, this time pulled by a earth creature, like a lion. And we see clearly like fire. And we have the Queen of Wands giving off a real Pele kind of vibe. She is again in skins, animal skins. And then the King with the sun. So I would safely say that suit was fire. So we have the Ace of Discs, the 2, definitely a duality here with the yin and yang and the Ouroboros. This is like snake skin, and then I can barely make out that it's the face of a snake up top, which in turn is like creates the lemniscate, rather, excuse me. Wow, look at that. So we're not seeing pentacles in this suit. I think we don't see them until we get to the court cards. But they really are just discs from 1 to 10. We see the pentacle here. We do see it take form. And then from there we have the Star of David. So here it's a pentagram, right? But here it's the Star of David. And the discs create that shape, those shapes. We have the 7. So we see reference to a tree. We see the 9, so close, and fully formed in the 10. With a flower at the top and roots at the bottom. And the way, the vine goes through, connecting. And then the Princess of Discs, where we see the pentacle. The Prince, where we don't. And again, he's on a chariot pulled by an animal that lives on land, not an air animal. And we see the goat and the Queen. I think we saw her. Okay, we saw the Princess with a goat too, so that's definitely land, earth. So you get the sense of that. And then the king. So there you have it. I'm going to use this deck. You know, I've had it for a year and never really used it. I only used it once or twice. But I think I'm going to be using it. I'm going to give it a shot. I'm not fully versed in Kabbalistic symbolism, but that doesn't deter me from using a deck, because as I use a deck and I don't understand something within that deck, I look it up, and then it only reinforces what I already understand about that deck, which is another reason why I don't go real deep with occult tarot decks. I like to keep it simple. The simple form usually has the truth in it. The extra embellishments confirm, or the extra embellishments of the occultists, in my view, add to, or another way of reminding somebody if they respond more to those kinds of symbols. But I think whether or not you read occult tarot, or you subscribe to occult tarot, you could still use a deck. You just use it. It's tarot is about symbols, right? And it's about your perception of the symbol and your understanding of the symbol and how you interpret the symbol in the context of the question being asked. So it doesn't stop me from using a deck, although my personal preference are pre-occult tarot decks. At any rate, that's a tangent I don't need to go into. Until next time, friends, stay well. Peace.